Before medicine had science, before hospitals existed, illness was blamed on gods, spirits, and curses. Then one man asked a dangerous question. What if disease is not divine punishment, but something we can understand? Hippocrates watched the body carefully. He listened. He refused magic. And by doing so, he changed medicine forever. This is the story of the man who taught humanity how to heal by observing, not believing.
All right, let's talk about a name everybody knows, Hippocrates. You hear that name and you immediately think father of medicine, right? But, behind that legendary title and the famous oath, there's this incredible story. A story about a revolution that literally ripped medicine away from magic and basically created the doctor's office as we know it. So let's do this. Let's peel back the layers, separate the man from the myth, and figure out how this ancient Greek revolution completely changed medicine forever.
I mean, for more than 2,000 years, this guy has been called the father of medicine. That's a title that's pretty much set in stone. But what if I told you that the most famous things we think he did, well, they might not be true at all?
So yeah, to get to the real Hippocrates, we've got to put on our detective hats. We're gonna have to peel back centuries of myths and legends to find the actual guy who kicked off such a massive change.
Okay, let's tackle the big myths head on. First up, the legend. He personally wrote the famous Hippocratic Oath. The reality? Nope. He almost certainly did not write it. Then there's the idea that he wrote something like 60 medical books. But the Hippocratic Corpus, as it's called, is really a collection from a whole bunch of different authors over a long period. So while he was definitely a real, super influential physician, this image we have of him as some singular godlike genius, that's mostly just a story built up over time.
So you might be asking, why did these myths even start? Well, it's pretty simple really. A serious lack of evidence from his own time. The philosopher Plato, he mentions him as a respected teacher, but that's one of the only accounts we have from when he was actually alive. The first real biography about him, it wasn't written until almost 500 years after he died. Think about that gap. In all that time, the man just naturally morphed into a legend. Okay, so if he wasn't the guy writing all the books and the oath, what was his real contribution? Well, it was something way bigger, way more profound. He and his school started a complete revolution in how we even think about being sick or healthy.
And this right here, this was the heart of that revolution. See, before Hippocrates, if you got sick, people would often just say it was a punishment from the gods. Simple as that. But the Hippocratic school came along with this totally radical new idea, that getting sick wasn't some divine curse. No, it was a natural result of your environment, what you eat, and how you live your life.
They called this new way of thinking rational medicine, and it was an absolute game changer. It was this idea that took healing out of the realm of superstition and religion. For the very first time, medicine started becoming its own professional thing, a field based on watching and thinking logically, not on praying and making sacrifices. This, right here, is the moment the doctor's office and the temple started going their separate ways.
In the Stu philosophy, it wasn't just some abstract idea. It came with a whole new toolkit, you could say, both in terms of theories and actual practical methods for understanding and treating the human body. The big idea at the center of it all was the theory of the four humors. Now, the belief was that our bodies have four main fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And if you are healthy, it meant they were all in perfect balance. So being sick was just an imbalance. Now, we know today that this whole idea is wrong, but you have to understand how crucial this first step was. For the first time ever, doctors had a system, a logical framework to explain why people get sick. And this single theory dominated Western medicine for more than 1,000 years. 1,000 years! And what's amazing is that this philosophy led to practices that sound, well, shockingly modern. They were all about meticulous, systematic observation of the patient. They took detailed histories of symptoms. They even tried to predict how a disease would play out, what we now call a prognosis. They believed in a holistic approach, treating the whole person, not just the cough or the fever. And they were huge on prevention. That old saying, walking is a man's best medicine, that's them. They were saying that stuff 2,500 years ago.
Their hands-on skills were also way ahead of their time. I mean, they developed what was basically an early antiseptic protocol for surgery. They would clean the wound with boiled water or wine, figure out how to control bleeding, stitch the incision closed, and then cover it all up with clean bandages to prevent infection. The core ideas there, they are the absolute foundation of every single operating room in the world today. And their influence was just massive, really pioneering entire fields of medicine. They made these huge leaps in neurology, arguing that epilepsy was a brain disorder, not some sacred disease from the gods. They advanced practical techniques, like developing methods for setting broken bones, and they were among the first to recognize that surgery was a totally separate specialty that required its own skilled craftsmen.
But of course, we can't talk about Hippocrates without talking about the text that's most famous for bearing his name, the Oath. And it's so much more than just a piece of paper, it's an ethical code that has literally shaped the soul of the medical profession for centuries.
So even if Hippocrates himself didn't write it word for word, the Oath perfectly captures the principles of his school. And these became the absolute bedrock of medical ethics. You know the ones. Do no harm. Protect your patient's confidentiality, and really importantly, know your limits. Act within your own expertise. The Oath even tells doctors not to perform certain surgeries, but to leave them to specialists or craftsmen. That's an incredible, super early call for specialization in medicine.
But here's where it gets really interesting. While those principles feel totally timeless, what they originally meant is actually part of a pretty fascinating modern debate. How are we supposed to interpret this ancient text in our world today?
And that whole debate really boils down to one central question. Is the Oath just a technical guide, a professional code of conduct for doing a good job? Or is it something much, much deeper, a kind of moral law?
Well, one perspective, as put forward by folks like Dr. John Patrick, is that the Oath's original power came from a belief in accountability, beyond this life. The idea is, should you trust a doctor more if they believe they'll be judged for their actions after they die? The thinking was that a doctor who believed in a final judgment would just be fundamentally more trustworthy. Their commitment wasn't just to their patient, but to a higher, unchanging principle.
Then you have the more common modern view. This sees the Oath more as a powerful symbolic tribute. It's a secular framework for professional ethics, not a religious text. Its core ideas are seen as part of a living document, one that gets adapted and revised over time to meet the new challenges of every era of medicine.
And what is just mind-blowing is its staying power. I mean, think about it. It starts in ancient Greece. Then it's preserved and spread by the Roman physician Galen. It becomes the basis for medical training all through the Middle Ages in both Europe and the Islamic world. It gets a major modern revision in 1948, right after World War II. And today, a version of it is still recited by medical students when they graduate, all across the globe. That's incredible.
So when you boil it all down, the real legacy of Hippocrates isn't just one guy or one book. It's so much bigger than that. It's the whole framework of rational medicine, the foundation of how doctors practice, and these timeless, essential questions about what a doctor's duty to their patient really is.
Which, it leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. That core principle, do no harm, is 2,500 years old. But what does that ancient command truly mean in a future of AI diagnostics, gene editing, and digital health records? The questions that the Hippocratic Revolution first asked, well, they might be more relevant right now than they have ever been.
Thank you for watching and for taking this journey into the story of Hippocrates.
Follow the channel, press like and subscribe for more stories like this, and leave your questions in the comments if you have.